I've got to tell you. Now, your being the way you are now gets my goat. It's all wrong. Puts things in my mind about myself. Makes me think if I got balled up about you, how do I know I wasn't balled up about myself? And that is plain damn foolishness. Well, when you know the story of me and Evelyn, you'll see there wasn't any other possible way out of it for her sake. Only I gotta start way back at the beginning. You won't understand. Now, you see, even as a kid, I was always restless. I had to keep on the go. You heard the old saying, ministers' sons are sons of guns? Well, that was me, and then some. Home was like a jail. I didn't fall for that religious bunk, listening to my old man whooping up hellfire and scaring those Hoosier suckers into shelling out their dough handed me a laugh. Although I had to hand it to him, though, the way he sold them nothing for something. I guess I take after him, and that's what made me such a good salesman. Well, anyway, as I said, home was like a jail, and so was school, and so was that damned hick town. The only place I liked was the pool rooms, where I could smoke sweet caprals and mop up a couple of beers, thinking I was a real hell-on-wheels sport. We had one hooker shop in town, and of course I liked that too. Not that I hardly ever had the entrance money. My old man was a tight old bastard. But I used to like to sit around the parlor and joke with the girls. And they liked me because I could kid them along and make them laugh. Well, you know how a small town is. Everybody got wise to me. They all said I was a no-good tramp. I didn't give a damn what they said. I hated everybody in that place. That is, except Evelyn. I loved Evelyn, even as a kid. And Evelyn loved me. Yes, sir. As far back as I can remember, Evelyn and I loved each other. She always stuck up for me. She never would believe the gossip, or she'd pretend she didn't. No one could convince her I was no good. Evelyn was stubborn as hell once she'd made her mind up. Even when I'd admit things and ask her forgiveness, she'd make excuses for me and defend me against myself. She'd kiss me and say she knew I didn't mean it and I wouldn't do it again. So I'd promise I wouldn't. I'd have to promise. She was so sweet and good, even though I knew damn well I'd... No, sir. You couldn't stop Evelyn. Nothing on earth could shake her faith in me. Even I couldn't. She was a sucker for a pipe dream. Well, naturally, her family forbid her seeing me. They were one of the town's best, rich even for that Hickburg. Owned the trolley line and the lumber company. Strict Methodist, too, and they hated my guts. But they couldn't stop Evelyn. She'd sneak notes to me and meet me on the sly. Well, I was getting more restless, see, and that town was getting more like a jail, and I made up my mind I had to beat it. I knew exactly what I wanted to be by then. I'd met a lot of drummers around the hotel, and I liked them. They were always telling jokes. They were sports. They kept moving. I liked their life, and I knew I could kid people and sell things. The hitch was how to get the railroad fare to the big town. So I told Molly Arlington my trouble. She was the madam of the cat house, and she liked me. She laughed, and she said, "Hell, kid, I'll stake you. I'll bet on you. Why, with that grin of yours and that line of bull, you could sell skunks for good ratters." Molly was right. She gave me confidence in myself. Now, I paid her back, too, the first money I ever earned. I remember I wrote her a kidding letter saying I was peddling baby carriages, and she and the girls had better take advantage of our bargain offer. Well, that's ahead of my story. The night before I left town, I had a date with Evelyn. I got all worked up. She was so pretty and sweet and good. And I told her straight, "You'd better forget me, Evelyn, for your own sake. I'm no good, and I never will be. I'm not worthy to wipe your shoes." I broke down and I cried. And she said, looking all white and scared, "Why, Teddy? Don't you still love me?" And I said, "Love you? God, Evelyn, I love you more than anything in the world, and I always will. And she said, then nothing else matters, Teddy, because nothing but death could stop my loving you. So I'll wait, and when you're ready, you send for me, and we'll get married. And I know I can make you happy, Teddy. And once you're happy, you won't want to do any of the bad things you've done anymore. And I said, of course I won't, Evelyn. And I meant it, too. I believed it. I loved her so much she could make me believe anything. So I beat it to the big town. I got a job, easy, and it was a cinch for me to make good. I had the knack. It was like a game, sizing people up quick, spotting what their pet pipe dreams were, and then kidding them along that line, pretending you believed what they wanted to believe about themselves. And then they liked you. They trusted you. And they wanted to buy something to show their gratitude. My God, it was fun. Still, all the while, I'd feel guilty, as if I had no right to be having such a good time away from Evelyn. On each of letters, I'd tell her how I missed her, but I'd keep warning her, too. I'd tell her all my faults, how I like my booze, and so on. But there was no shaking Evelyn's belief in me or her dreams about the future. And after each letter of hers, I'd be as full of faith as she was. So as soon as I got enough saved to start us off, I sent for her, and we got married. Christ, wasn't I happy for a while? And wasn't she happy? Now, I don't care what anyone says. I'll bet there never was two people who loved each other more than me and Evelyn. Not only then, but always. After. In spite of everything I did. Well, it's all there at the start. Everything that happened afterwards. I never could learn to handle temptation. I'd want to reform and mean it. I'd promise Evelyn, I'd promise myself, and I'd believe it. I'd tell her it's the last time. And she'd say, I know it's the last time, Teddy. You'll never do it again. Well, that's what made it so hard. That's what made me feel such a rotten skunk, her always forgiving me. My playing around with women, for instance, and it was only a harmless good time to me. It didn't mean anything. But I know what it meant to Evelyn, so I'd say to myself, never again. You know how it is traveling around. Those goddamn lousy hotel rooms. I guess so I'd see things in the wallpaper. Lonely and homesick. But at the same time, sick of home, too. I'd feel free. I want to celebrate a little. I never drank on the job, so it had to be dames. Any tart. What I'd want was some tramp I could be myself with without being ashamed. Someone I could tell a dirty joke to and she'd laugh. Well, sometimes I'd try some joke I thought was a corker on Evelyn. She'd always make herself laugh, but I could see she thought it was dirty, not funny. And Evelyn always knew about the tarts I'd been with when I'd come home from a trip. She'd kiss me and look in my eyes, and she'd know. And I'd see in her eyes how she was trying not to know, and then telling herself, well, even if it's true, he couldn't help it. They tempt him. He's lonely. He hasn't got me. It's only his body anyway. He doesn't love them. I'm the only one he loves. And she was right, too. I never loved anyone else. I couldn't if I wanted to. Well, she forgave me even when it all had to come out in the open. You know how it is when you keep on taking chances. You may be lucky for a long time, but you get nicked in the end. I picked up a nail from some tart in Altoona. Well, I had to do an awful lot of lying and stalling when I got home. That didn't do any good. The quack I went to got all my dough, and then he told me I was cured, and I took his word. But I wasn't. And poor Evelyn. But she did her best to make me believe. She fell for my lie about how traveling men get things from drinking cups on trains. Anyway, she forgave me the same way she forgave me every time I'd turn up from a periodical drunk. And you know what I'd be like at the end of one of those. You've seen me, like something lying in the gutter that no alley cat would lower itself to drag in. Like something they threw out of the DT ward at Bellevue along with the garbage. Like something that ought to be dead and isn't. Well, Evelyn wouldn't have heard from me in a month or more. She'd have been waiting there alone at home with the neighbors shaking their heads and feeling sorry for her out loud. That was before she got me to move to the outskirts where there weren't any next-door neighbors. And then the door would open, and in I'd stumble, looking like what I said, into her home, which she kept everything so spotless and clean. And I had sworn it would never happen again, and now I'd have to start swearing again. This was the last time. And I could see disgust having a battle in her eyes with love. But love always won out. She'd make herself kiss me as though nothing happened, as though I'd just come home from a business trip. She'd never complain or bawl me out. Well, Christ! Can you imagine the guilty skunk she made me feel? If she'd only admitted once she didn't believe anymore in her pipe dream that someday I'd behave. But she never would. Evelyn was stubborn as hell. Once she set her heart on anything, you couldn't shake her faith that it had to come true tomorrow. It was the same old story over and over for years and years. Kept piling up inside her and inside me. God, can you picture all I made her suffer and all the guilt she made me feel and how I hated myself? If she only hadn't been so damn good, if she'd been the same kind of a wife I was a husband. God, I used to pray sometimes. I'd even say to her, go on, why don't you, Evelyn? It'd serve me right. I wouldn't mind. I'd forgive you. Now, of course, I pretend I was kidding. Same way I used to joke here about her being in the hay with the Iceman. She'd have been so hurt if I said it seriously. She'd have thought I stopped loving her. Hey, I suppose you think I'm a liar. That no woman could have stood all she stood and still loved me so much. That it isn't human for any woman to be so pitying and forgiving. Well, I'm not lying. And if you'd ever seen her, you'd realize I wasn't. It was written all over her face. Sweetness and love and pity and forgiveness. Wait, I'll show you. I always carry her picture. No, I'm forgetting. I tore it up afterwards. I didn't need it anymore. It kept piling up, like I said. I got so I thought of it all the time. I hated myself more and more, thinking of all the wrong I'd done to the sweetest woman in the world who loved me so much. I got so I'd curse myself for a lousy bastard every time I saw myself in the mirror. I felt such pity for her, it drove me crazy. Now, you wouldn't believe it, would you? A guy like me that's knocked around so much could feel such pity. It got so every night I'd wind up hiding my face in her lap, bawling and begging for forgiveness. And of course, she'd always comfort me and say, never mind, Teddy. I know you won't ever again. Christ, I loved her so. But I began to hate that pipe dream. I began to be afraid I was going bughouse because sometimes I couldn't forgive her for forgiving me. I even caught myself hating her for making me hate myself so much. I tell you, there is a limit to the guilt you can feel and the forgiveness and the pity you can take. You have to begin blaming someone else, too. I got so sometimes when she kissed me, it was like she did it on purpose to humiliate me, as though she'd spit in my face. But all the time I saw how crazy and rotten of me that was, and it only made me hate myself all the more. You'd never believe I could hate so much a good-natured, happy-go-lucky slob like me. And as the time got nearer to when I was due to come here for my drunk around Harry's birthday, I got nearly crazy. I kept swearing to her every night that this time I really wouldn't, until I made it a real final test to myself and to her. And she'd keep encouraging me and saying, I can see you really mean it now, Teddy. I know you'll conquer it this time, and we'll be so happy, dear. Oh, when she'd say that and kiss me, I'd believe it too. And then she'd go to bed and I'd stay up alone because I couldn't sleep and I didn't want to disturb her, tossing and rolling around. And I'd get so damn lonely. And I'd get to thinking how peaceful it was here, sitting around with the old gang, getting drunk and forgetting love, joking and laughing and singing and telling lies. And finally, I knew I'd have to come. And I knew if I came this time, it was the finish. I'd never have the guts to go back and be forgiven again. And that would break poor Evelyn's heart, because to her it would mean I didn't love her anymore. Oh, that last night, I driven myself nearly crazy trying to figure some way out for her. I went into the bedroom. I was going to tell her it was the end. But I couldn't do that to her. She was sound asleep. I thought, God, if she only never wakes up, she'll never know. And then it came to me. The only possible way out for her sake. I remember I'd given her a gun for her protection while I was away, and it was in the bureau drawer. She'd never feel any pain. She'd never wake up from that dream. So I killed her. And then I saw I'd always known that was the only possible way to give her peace and free her from the misery of loving me. And I saw it meant peace for me, too, knowing she was at peace. And I felt as if a ton of guilt had been lifted off my mind. I remember I stood by the bed and suddenly I had to laugh. I couldn't help it. And I knew Evelyn would forgive me. I remember I heard myself speaking to her as if it was something I always wanted to say. Well, you know what you can do with your pipe dream now? You damn bitch! Oh, no. No, I never. No, that's a lie. I never said it. God, I couldn't have said that. If I did, I'd gone insane. Well, I loved Evelyn better than anything in life.